Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is the Bleeding Beastmaster with the Minions. And we're going to be rocking 4 wolves that are going to have incredible attack speed and a lot of bleed chance, and then we'll also be rocking the Spriggan, who will not only be healing, but with her incredible cast speed is also going to have a lot of bleed chance, and with Entangling Roots doubling that cast speed, we're going to be able to do a lot of bleeding hits, and especially on single target, we're going to be stacking the bleed chance on the training dummy. We got the bleeding ticks up to 100,000 damage, which is a lot of bleed damage. It doesn't stack quite like poison, it doesn't get the bonus per stack. If that were to be poison chance that we were doing with that, you'd be doing over 1,000,000 damage, which is absolutely crazy to think about. So with that, we're also building towards being the tankiest build we can get. Your Primalist is going to just be a tank. You're going to be able to face tank any of the abilities that any of the timeline bosses throw at you. Why? Because you have damage reduction everywhere. You're going to have capped resist, you're going to have your critical strike avoidance, and then to top it off, you're going to have about 800 threshold for endurance, as well as your capped out 60% damage reduction. So when you get to your 800 health, you're going to have your 60% damage reduction of all sorts kick in, and then when you get to 35% health, you're going to have the Berserker kick in as well, which is an additional 30% damage reduction. On top of that, you'll have Aspect of the Boar almost at all times, which will be another 30% damage reduction for all of your life pool, and then you have another 16% damage reduction for any mobs that are nearby that are attacking you. So being in close quarters is even more damage reduction. All of that together is just going to make you very, very tanky. You'll also have a shield. Your shield will have a block chance, which will be even a little bit more, chance to have some damage reduction. And then for all that, you're going to have a lot of leech. You'll have the Spriggan healing you. You'll have Entangling Roots healing you. You'll have the aspect of the shark, which is going to just give you incredible amounts of attack speed so you can leech a lot. Your survivability will be really, really high with this build. So with that, let's go ahead and get into the skills and the interactions that make it so. For skills, I'm running Swipe, Summon Frenzy Totem, Summon Wolf, Entangling Roots, and Summon Spriggan. For Swipe, we have this to give us a lot of leech, to give us mana so we can cast more roots, and then of course for a little bit of attack speed. We also built into the bleed a little bit, so make sure to get those 5 points in Blood Beast to help with that bleed chance. You'll get some physical shred chance, which is going to increase the bleed damage because it's physical. And then we have points in Duality of Nature so that we get mana back, so that we can cast Entangling Roots more, which will increase your productivity when it comes to healing and buffing your minions. We went with the attack speed and Feline Hunter, and then we also have 5 points in Way of the Hunt for that extra leech and damage. Then for Summon Frenzy Totem, this was all about the companions, so we tried to give them as much as possible. And while the increased frenzy effect is very effective for them to get that attack and cast speed, you don't have to put the 5 points in Beast All Frenzy. Their melee physical damage, their hit damage really isn't going to be all that much. We're not really building into that. We want the dot damage. However, there wasn't really a lot of other spots that we really cared about putting it, so you can put at least 5 points anywhere that you want. I also built into the bottom to give the minions more survivability, even though they have a lot of survivability as it is. Now, here's the cool thing about the Revitalizing Totem. This health regen granted is percentage based. Now remember, it used to be percentage based that you put on gear, but now you give flat amounts. So with just 2 Tier 5 affixes of minion health regen, you can give them 180 to almost 200 flat health regen. And now they get a huge bonus to this. Just with this is a 75% bonus, which is almost another 100 health per second healed for your companions, which is pretty big. And then they also have some in their trees, and we'll go over that. But they get a lot of health regeneration, which is going to increase their survivability dramatically. Then we give yourself haste so that you can move out of harm's way if need be. And then we give your totems even more frenzy. Since we don't really care about our attack speed so much, we have aspect of the shark anyways, we're going to give more totem effect to our companions, which will allow them to apply more bleed. And 3 points in warding totem is going to give them physical and elemental resist, which just increases their incredible tankiness already. In fact, even as tanky as we are, the minions themselves are more tanky than us. And then 1 point in Reinforced Totem just to make it last a little bit longer, to make sure we have 100% uptime of the Frenzy Totem effects. Now remember, taking these points out and putting them into, say, 2 more points into the health regen is going to increase their survivability even more. Then for the Summon Wolf, we have this set up. I didn't want to wear any uniques, so since we weren't going to wear the Claw or the Fang, we had to spec into getting the extra Companion and the extra Minion in this tree, which kind of spread us out. So since we were already building into the Bleed, and we put all these points into Serrated Claws, Patient Hunters, and Crippling Wounds, I went ahead and threw one more point in Safety and Numbers, which means that I could summon the maximum amount of wolves that I needed. And this meant that we no longer had to wear the Fang or the Claw, which is good. Now you don't even have to worry about getting that, even though those ones are pretty easy to get since they're gambleable. And then on the left side, we wanted the +1 to the maximum companion, but we really don't need more, damage, even though, it's somewhat helpful, but we don't want the cold damage, we didn't want the stun chance, we didn't want the chill chance, so I wanted to go down the bottom, and, more health, multiplicative of other factors, is going to give us, and our wolves, they have about 3,000 health to begin with here, so they get 30% more, which puts them at about 4,000 health, which is a huge amount of health for your wolves. And then they get more health regen, which is a huge. Remember, this this percentage increase upon the flat amount that we get on gear now is a huge amount. So they have about 200 flat. This 150% increase puts that up to about 450%, or almost 500 flat health regen that they have now. And then you have, of course, the Frenzy Totem as well. So they're going to be regenning 600 to 700 health per second on top of their leech. And then 1 point in Earthborn gives them more leech. And this is physical health leech. Now the reason this is good is because this counts as bleed damage. They're going to be leeching their bleed damage, which is just going to increase their survivability even more. And then 1 point in Pack Hunters raises that maximum amount of wolves you can have by 1 more. And then for Entangling Roots, we have this set up to buff our Spriggan, to buff our wolves, to give them attack speed, to give them some buffs, and for a lot of healing, as well as a damage boost. So we have 2 points in Imbued Sap to give them all 60% increased damage. 4 points in Spriggans of the Grove gives the Spriggan 100% more cast speed, which is huge. Now we did not go into the spell physical damage because we don't care about the hit damage. We just care about that cast speed to apply the bleed. This was to be completely built around just the bleed. And then 3 points in Grove Master gives increased area to Entangling Roots. 2 points in Venomous Pack gives poison chance. If you want, you can build more into this, but I didn't really want to build into poison any more than I had to because we want the damage to all be bleed. And then that allowed us to get 3 points in Frenzy Roots to give them more attack speed, and 1 point in Memories of Spring allows them to keep the buffs even if they're not in the roots for 2 seconds. On the right side, we got into Nourish for more healing per patch, and 1 point in Bountiful Harvest for a healing Nova at the end of its life. And then we have Summon Spriggan, and for Summon Spriggan, we did a couple of things. We're trying some things with it, and we wanted it to summon the Vines, and even though the Vines are melee minions who poison enemies they attack, they are a minion, so they get minion bleed chance, which means their attacks will not only poison, they should be applying the bleed chance that we have, which is about 300% or just slightly over 300%, which is huge, and you can get multiple vines. You can have your Spriggan summon 3 vines, which the cool thing about that is it means that you're going to have basically 3 extra minions that are applying bleed. Now they have to be close to the enemy, and this only really works against rares and bosses where there's enough time for it to actually affect anything. But it is nice to get that little extra bleed damage. And then we have the Spriggan set up to just absolutely shotgun, machine gun the orbs in a row. So we go completely down this left bottom and get the Veil Orb to fire in a line. We don't care that it reduces damage. We just want those orbs flying to get as many hits as possible. And then we have more hit damage against bleeding enemies. I only took this because 200% more is just such a huge modifier. You might as well take it for some damage. However, you can put those 5 points elsewhere if you'd like. And then we went into the bottom to get into the healing. It gives 400% increased healing to minions, and that aura is now going to give about 50 health per second to all your minions, which is enough to be useful, but not enough to super increase the survivability at endgame, but every little bit helps. For passives, I have 25 points in the Primalist base class with 4 points in Gift of the Wilderness, 4 points in Natural Attunement, 1 point in Primal Strength, and 6 points in Survival of the Pack. You definitely want all of that Minion melee damage leech's health and your melee damage leech. The reason that this helps is because your survivability, your regeneration of health, is really dependent upon one, Entangling Roots healing you, but it's not much, but the leech that you can get back. You take so much damage reduction that having the ability to leech a lot of life, it's like tenfold, because even though these hits now do little bits and they take away your life, the fact that you can replenish your life so fast is what allows you to just be so incredibly, tanky. And then we have 5 points in Hunter's Restoration, as well as the 5 points in Berserker. So when our health does fall down to that 35% barrier, you will get another 30% less damage taken. And you'll notice that in the gameplay against the Lagan, when we face tank the beam, you will actually, if you watch it in slow-mo, notice that right off the bat you seem to be taking a lot of damage, and then as soon as it hits that threshold barrier of about 800 health, it slows down dramatically, and then as it continues to pummel, as soon as it gets to about that 35%, it just stops going down. It just kind of hovers there, and you're leeching more than it's doing, even though it's attacking incredibly fast. Your leech counteracts it just enough to where even if you were to continue to stay in that beam, it would basically just stay right there, unless you stopped attacking and you didn't have any leech, and then of course you'd wither away. But that the power of all those damage reductions is so incredible that you're not going to get one shot in this build. And then 10 points in the Druid, 6 points in Blood Claws so that you get more physical damage leech's health. You also get some physical penetration, 4 points in Bark Skin for that endurance percentage and flat armor. You need 10 points in here to unlock the summon Spriggan. 0 points in the Shaman, and 76 points in the Beastmaster, which is our mastered class. And what we basically got going here is we're digging into the aspect of the Boar, the aspect of the Shark, the aspect of the Viper, because it gives 50% attack speed. And with all of that, you have your maximum companion. And then we also, the biggest thing, with 1 point in Life of the Wilderness, our endurance also applies to companions. So if their life drops down to 800, they get a 60% damage reduction kick in, which means your companions are not dying, not anytime soon. That is a huge thing, being able to give your companions your endurance threshold, which is just crazy. Not even your threshold, but your endurance altogether, the percentage and the threshold. And the most important things is to get the aspect of Shark to really be able to stack. You want to get the most duration you can, and the 10 points in primal aspects for the duration is a huge factor in that. So make sure you put into this. Another important one is getting the 5 points in primal strength so that you have a chance to proc aspect of the Boar on your melee hit. It means that you can get 100% uptime of it versus having to wait until you get hit by a melee attack to have it last for 5 seconds. You kind of want to have it before you get hit, so make sure to get some points into Primal Strength. And then the 8 points in Ursane Strength will make you take 16% less damage from nearby enemies. For items and idols, so the type of idol you want is increase aspect of the Shark duration. You don't have to have that. You're not really building around it too tough, but if you have that, awesome. And then the suffix you want, that's the more important thing, is percentage minion chance to bleed on hit. And that affix actually comes on quite a few different types of idols. I believe it comes on the 1x4 horizontals as well. I think you can get it on 1x3s. I'm not 100% on that, but the minion chance to bleed on hit comes on a few different things. So you should have some of them. Get as many of those as you want, because this minion chance to bleed applies to all your summon Spriggan pet, your summon wolves, and the vines, because they are minions that your Spriggan will cast at enemies. And then, as I also stated, there are no uniques in this build. However, I'm just going to hover over everything here. We have tier 16 or less on all of these items. Some of the main things is on the helm and chest, that shared ignite bleed duration, and you can get minion chance to bleed on hit. I'm going to hover over all of these, and by the way, for the shield, you get 75% poison resist with the Carapace shield, which just knocks it out for you, so that's the one you definitely want to go with. It saves you a couple of affixes. Again, though, in the description of the video, there will be a link to the written guide. The written guide will have a link to the build planner, where you can see all these items, change them to like what you have to see what you'd be missing, and kind of form it to the way you need. And then for the character sheet, as you can see, we're pretty capped on resistances. We have a bit of armor. We have capped endurance. We have almost an 800 endurance threshold. We're a little low on critical strike avoidance, but you can get that by adding either one more slot or getting better rolls than what I did. I got a couple of min rolled tier 5s on a couple of my pieces, so we're kind of a little low on that. And then for damage stats, nothing really impressive to see here, but the minion stats is where it's at. You'll see they're sitting at 400% minion spell damage for the Spriggan. You have 275% minion damage overall, and then you have that 362% melee damage for the wolves, 432% physical damage, which is great for all that bleed chance we have going on for everyone. And then they have 324% increased health with a 288 dodge rating. Do not overestimate dodge rating. Very powerful for your pets. And then of course they get that 40% minion power from our character level being level 100. And then for how I play this build, so I'm going to summon all of my wolves. Sometimes I keep it on autocast so they can howl, but you don't really need that in this build because it's not the melee damage that you really want. But we're going to have 4 wolves and we're going to have our Spriggan. And then when we just have them normally attack, as you can see, we got the orbs going. You got 5 hits going on just one attack from the Spriggan. Your wolves have pretty decent. You throw down, your frenzy totem, everything speeds up. They get quite a bit faster here, and it's going to be the Entangling Roots that really does the trick here. And as I freeze always on the first cast of Entangling Roots for whatever reason, look at that, just flying. Now you throw down both of them, and you just get that steady machine gun stream going, which is just crazy amount of hits. You have to think that that's one attack from your Spriggan is getting 5 hits. That's as much as 5 wolves would be doing. So your Spriggan is technically applying more bleed than your wolves are. However, once you put all this together and you get it all going, you apply some bleed yourself, you got your vines going, and then you have everyone walk away, you can see that you're getting up there upwards of 60, 80. If you have it all going, you have 100,000 bleed damage on the training dummy, which is just crazy amounts of bleed damage. And it's the reason it stacks so well is because of all that bleed duration that we have, as well as the bleed chance. And the one thing that we're missing here that will happen when you are actually in gameplay is you can only get 1 to 2 stacks of the shark against the training dummy. When you're actually attacking a rare or a boss and your attack speed increases, your wolves start applying more bleed because their attack speed increases, and that's when you even get more bleed damage. And that's why bosses, especially the single target bosses that don't have cutscenes, allow that bleed to stack to the maximum, and their life starts draining really, really quickly. Alright, let's go ahead and get into some more gameplay.